Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Schmoedown Rundown. Introducing first, Frankie Stats Janisch. And their co-host, the man of controversy, Mr. Bryan Davids. And finally, your host, Aaron Turner. Let's get ready to Schmoedown.
What's going on, Movie Trivia Schmoedown fans? Welcome to this special preview episode of the Schmoedown Rundown. My name is Aaron. I'm your host. Joining me today, Frank Janisch. What's up, man?
How you doing, Aaron? How's it out there in Florida?
Alive and well, man. Alive and well.
Good to hear.
Bryan Davids is also here. What's up, man?
Aaron, since you're alive and well, I might as well bring this up now. I seem to recall a comment from our bracketology episode about a 12 seed making the final in regard to my bracket, and you voicing some sort of skepticism over this decision of mine.
I don't know. I don't go back and listen to old episodes.
Okay, well, we'll talk more about this on Saturday's episode.
Okay, fair enough. Well, guys, the reason that we're here is, of course, we have a giant title match going on this Friday. It is Dan Murrell, the dangerous one, the champion, versus our commissioner, Kristian Harloff, who is on quite the streak. We are going to talk about that and break it down in depth. But before we get there, we have the matter of a little celebrity Schmoedown action that went on this week. We were on a party boat, advertising the movie Party Boat, now available on Crackle, free on PlayStation Network.
Are we going with the celebrity Boatdown term? Has that caught on yet?
You can make it a thing right now, and it can be a thing.
Okay, well, let's go for it. I don't have as much confidence in this one as compared to Glowdown, but
well, we had Beau, Mirchoff, and Davern from Party Boat joining the Schmoedown this week, and they were joined by regulars Jeff Snyder and John Roca. Beau on Team Patriot and Brett on Team Outlaw. What do you guys think of these two pairings? Could you have picked better people to go against?
You know, I like Roca and Snyder being on these opposite teams. Because if you go back to their Patriot feud, you have that right there. So that's always good fodder for the audience. And then you have these two other guys that we've seen that are kind of, they're pretty funny and outgoing. So I think they matched up well with Roca and Snyder on their individual teams.
I didn't know what we were going to get. I didn't know we were going to get an actual match. What did you think, Bryan?
I don't know how they decided these pairings, but it worked. It worked quite well. So Snyder and Outlaw, obviously they've got a rivalry that's been going for a while. So there was some great material that we knew we would get there. Clearly, Brett and Beau have a little bit of a camaraderie already from working together. So we got some added entertainment between them. Good vibe right off the bat. That's when we kind of knew we were in for a good match, all things considered.
Yeah, I think we started off on the right foot by both entrance musics. One, I'm on a Boat by The Lonely Island. That was Beau that came out to that. Love that song. And Brett coming out to My Heart Will Go On. I love the nautical themes. What about you guys?
Were they playing on the fact that Brett kind of looks like Leo from a distance? Was that the point of using the Titanic song?
I didn't get that until they actually said it, and I go, maybe if I had no glasses on, I could see that, yeah.
I didn't know that's what they were going for, but I thought it was really awkward that he and Roca reenacted that classic Leo and Kate Winslet pose. That was a little weird to me. And then, of course, shout out to Makuga for the draw me like one of your French girls joke. That was pretty funny.
The life preserver that Outlaw wears comes in quite handy for a match like this.
That's right.
Hopefully it's not made by Calvin Klein.
Oh man. Yes.
Shots fired. Hey, guys, Tom Dagnino was there. We cannot forget about him. He was there to captain Team Patriot. And he said this line about, "We're coming for your title, the real one." And no one knew what the heck he was talking about. I have no idea what he was talking about. Do you guys have any idea what he was talking about?
I thought it was just in reference to the commissionership. And I don't know if Dagnino realizes what's the actual title of commissioner or title. He might be confused. So that could have been it.
I see. So being a commissioner is holding a belt. That's a very subtle reference there. I like it.
Kind of like Duke or Prince, I guess. You would call yourself commissioner. I don't know. The only commissioner that I know of is Michael Chiklis. But are we ready to talk about the rounds now?
I don't have much to say about round one. I have something to say about the comparison between round 1 and round 2, in that round 1 had easy questions because, again, celebrity matches are not meant to be competitive. They're meant to be entertaining. You want these celebrities answering questions. But compared to round 1, round 2 was much harder as far as degree of difficulty. I mean, there were questions about Ray Winstone in Beowulf. There were questions about a Paul Walker movie called Timeline. So compared to round 1, these were 2 very imbalanced rounds as far as difficulty. Maybe, just maybe, when they saw the ability of these 2 guys, they said before round 2, let's kick up the level of questions a bit. Do you think that's possible, Frank?
I think that definitely it could be a possibility. I was also wondering if they go to whoever's coming in and go, hey, you got a list of like 5 to 10 of your favorite movies. They kind of get a feel for what they like, and then they pull from their question list and kind of formulate questions around that. But the difference between round 1 and round 2 was quite obvious. Maybe that was also partly because they knew that they'd be teaming up with regulars in Rocha and Snyder, so they could afford to up the difficulty level. That may be the case. I don't know. But nonetheless, you're right. It was pretty obvious the disparity between the first and second round.
Aaron, did you know who Lord Asriel is? I mean, that's a tough question.
No idea.
Daniel Craig. I mean, that was a tough question.
Daniel Craig?
And yet Beau got the Ray Winstone question. They missed the easy aliens question because Snyder, I think, thought they were asking about Alien, singular. Beau got the timeline question as well, I believe. So very, very interesting round 2 in comparison to round 1. There were a couple moments throughout the match where I'm like, wow, like this guy actually came to play. So same with Brett. Both of these guys had moments that really impressed me. And I got to say, it was nice seeing John Rocha play with a different partner, someone who was really trying to contribute.
Oh, jeez. Come on. We're not even at their match yet, Brian. Come on.
I'm trying to be genuine.
Well, hold on. But did anybody snicker a little bit when Rocha got asked a Predator question? I kind of snickered a little bit.
What do you mean?
Because John Rocha is famous for calling Predator a B movie.
Oh, that's right.
Which is something that myself and the commissioner do not like at all.
Well, he did like Independence Day Resurgence, so take it with a grain of salt.
Fair point.
But the planes, trains, and automobiles, the parking spot, these are tough questions they were getting in round 2. And I don't want to belabor this point too much, but the Brat Pack question, the song to wrap up that movie, the wording was so insane on that question. And I realize fans do submit some of these questions, and I realize that for celebrity matches, they're probably pulling from the bottom of the barrel as far as submitted questions go. But I always say, when you cannot read the question in person as you're playing, it's very important to make sure these questions are worded in a way or proofed in a way to where they are as clear as possible. And this is a perfect example as to why in league play matches that we cannot risk situations like this, because it was so hard to understand this question as the viewer, and we can read the question on the screen.
Shall we talk about round 3 now?
Again, the tough questions continued. The Henchman in Blazing Saddles, Mongo, Miranda Otto as Tom Cruise's children's mother in War of the Worlds, Captain Salazar in Pirates, that was pretty easy. Kevin Spacey as Verbal Kint, that was also pretty easy. But Snyder for the win, the composer for Mystic River, $1 Million Baby, Kristian serving him up a softball, a hanging breaking ball. Clint Eastwood, man. The question started with, what Hollywood icon? Boston-based movies for the most part, too. Mystic River. Is $1 Million Baby based in Boston? I can't remember, but still, for a Boston guy, he's got to know that. Add the aliens misfire to this. Patriot should have won.
Yeah, it just didn't happen. Didn't happen that way. I didn't know that he composed the music for Changeling. I like it sometimes when a question gives me education. Did you guys know that?
I knew that he was a composer. I knew that he's got this side hobby that he's actually taken quite seriously. And it just goes to show that besides being an actor, one of the greatest, most recognized actors in the world, and now a world-renowned director, the guy's just the total package. He is the Swiss Army knife of Hollywood.
Well, I had no idea, so I'm with you, Aaron.
Wow. But guys, something that I've been wanting to see for a while in the event of record-setting performances that are cut short by TKOs or knockouts or whatever, is them reading the questions that the winning team or potentially losing team would have gotten, such as in poker when you see what cards you would have been dealt had the hand continued. And so they gave Team Outlaw their 5-point question, and they would not have gotten it correct. So, Aaron, what was that 5-point question again?
Basically, it's what book summons the evil in the Evil Dead franchise. And it's well known. It's the Necronomicon. And they could not pull it. That's unbelievable.
This is Bruce Campbell's Ash, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff's a genre fan, but I don't know if this is in his particular wheelhouse.
I couldn't tell if he knew it or not. Like, he said, "Oh, I'm just going to walk away." Like, I couldn't tell if he knew it or he was just ready to leave.
Well, it wasn't his question. It was Outlaws. It wasn't.
Well, I know that, but he
Jeff.
kind of like when they read the question, he was like, "Oh, I'm not even going to deal with this. I'm getting up from the table."
He was just being difficult. But guys, is this something that you would want to see in the event of a record-setting performance being cut short? I'm not saying that the points would count, but just out of curiosity, we could see, for example, Wolves of Steel, those 29 points in 2 rounds against Late to the Party. Would you guys want to see them answer their round 3 questions just to see if they would have gotten the record?
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
I gotta say no as well. Yeah, I kind of like the way it goes right now.
Well, maybe it's just something we do for exhibitions.
Especially if the competitors, they want to know, they're the visiting competitors, they want to know, hey, what would have happened? Yeah, I could totally go along with that.
But guys, I gotta say, I like seeing the Outlaw, JSR, playing with someone other than the pizza guy. And Dagnino dropped this idea, I mean, he said it as a joke, but he dropped this idea of JSR playing with Brett full-time instead of the pizza guy. And I did like the fact that Brett seemed to be more active than the pizza guy is. I'm not saying that JSR is going to drop the pizza guy, but I like the fact that Brett was actively trying to get answers for Outlaw. Because typically when the pizza guy doesn't know something, he kind of gives up and just defers to Outlaw. I'm not saying all the time, but there are a lot of cases where if he doesn't know it, he doesn't fight for it. But with Brett, you can tell he was fighting for a lot of these answers. He was really digging in the back of his brain for some of these questions. And that is something that I admire. So maybe Dagnino's crazy idea wasn't too crazy, but another successful celebrity Schmoedown. And this is why we cannot discount the entertainment side of the Schmoedown. We all love heated competition, but you could have a little bit of both in these matches. Ultimately, do not forget the purpose of celebrity Schmoedowns, to grow the league by expanding its reach. These guys were on an MTV show. They have 500,000 followers between them. Awkward, the MTV show they were on, that show had a huge female fan base. And guess what the Schmoedown needs more of? Female fans, female players, as less than 15% of the Facebook group is female. And that's truly indicative of the overall audience too. So if you want the league to be around for many years, it has to be able to grow its audience, especially its female audience. So some of you are content watching Roka play Snyder 25 times, but Complex will only make that possible if we do our part to support their efforts to grow. So did you guys enjoy the Celebrity Boatdown?
Yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. I always enjoy these celebrity matches just because it's more of a lively feel to it. It's not so serious, which is fun as well, but it's nice to get a nice change of pace every once in a while. And these two guys certainly brought that along with Roka and Snyder. So overall, I did enjoy everything that they brought to this version of the Schmoedown, the Celebrity Schmoedown, the Celebrity Boatdown, as we're going to try and make it happen. So, yeah, I enjoyed it, and I look forward, again, to the next one they get to do.
I just want to say this one more time. I know I've said it before, but in the case where the audience may not know who a celebrity is, I like that they are bringing in Schmoedown veterans as bait to entice the audience into watching. However, in the case of someone like Sam Witwer, where you know you've got a heavyweight coming in, let's just let the heavyweights play. We don't need to involve our people in those matches. Most of the time, you're going to have people that don't know the game, they don't know trivia all that well. Then there's a reason to bring in our veterans. But in certain cases, just remember, we don't want to get in the way of someone like Sam Witwer. We want to let him be the show.
There might be another thing where, yeah, you find out, bringing in these celebrities, that some of these celebrities have some really, really vast knowledge of movie trivia. And what if one day we got Sam Witwer and Brittany from Glow to do a celebrity Schmoedown that had some real stakes to it between two celebrities? Maybe something like that could happen down the road. I know I certainly would be excited to kind of see that kind of.
Yeah, we got to see Brittany back. I mean, who knows what will happen with Clark and the Crusher? Maybe they form a stable with Brittany. I don't know. But all I'm saying is these recent celebrity Schmoedowns are showing us that there is some talent among these celebrity pools. So this is a recruitment tool as well.
I think they have found the sweet spot by doing the competitors that are normally in the league with the celebrities. I think that's the sweet spot. I think they've finally found a system that works. Because I look back at a couple past Celebrity Schmoedowns. I look back at the Brian Goodman, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. While it was entertaining, like both guys were pretty entertaining, think of like what it would have been like if maybe they were paired on a team or something like that. It would have been even better.
Well, that is one that definitely warrants veterans playing. Same with the Power Rangers one. With Sam Witwer coming in, would you really want to pair him with someone like Rocha or Snyder, or do you just want to see him do the heavy lifting himself?
Oh, I would just want to see Sam. He's fantastic. That guy is a showman. He's a guy that came in and immediately got it. Like sometimes I think it's hard for these celebrities to come in and understand like what's going on. It's like, oh, it's a game show. Okay, I get it. But they don't kind of understand like necessarily the minutia, if you will, of it. And I think Sam is a guy that got it instantly. And it works.
And
well.
I realize guys like Sam, they are diamonds in the rough. They are needles in the haystack. But keep this in the back of your mind. Let's not get in their way in those rare cases. Let's just let them be the show in those instances. But yeah, for Power Rangers, for Goodman, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, definitely pair them up. And right now we're in a good zone, though. And people are enjoying them, whether it's the entertainment, whether it's the competition, whether it's the jokes. It's a good time. It's a really good time. But yeah, I hope people understand that there is a bigger purpose to this. You widen your reach, potentially grow your audience, including the female audience in this case.
And that's what's most important.
Hello everyone, your faithful host Aaron here. Do you like what you're hearing so far on the rundown? Great. Give us a thumbs up if you're listening on YouTube. Leave a comment. Join the discussion. Listening via iTunes, please rate and review the Schmoes Know iTunes feed. It helps us out tremendously. It helps us move up and down on the charts. That way more people can listen and more people can get involved. We would really appreciate it. Be sure to check out the other shows on SK Plus. On YouTube, there is something different for you every single day. Different shows with different personalities. You can't go wrong. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at SD Rundown and email us anytime. Schmoedownrundown@gmail.com. And now back to me.
All right, guys, we're going to move into the main event of this episode. It is the preview between champion Dan Murrell and our faithful commissioner, Kristian Harloff. It goes down this Friday. These two guys have been on quite the tear. Dan winning back his title at Collision in the triple threat, then immediately defending it against Sam Levine, the free-for-all champion, and he was successful in retaining. And, of course, Kristian has been on his I'm going to retire, maybe not tour, and this is where it all comes to a head. Will Kristian win the title? Will he not? Will Dan continue his run? I guess we'll find out this Friday, but before we get there, let's talk about it.
First off, it's called the Nothing to Lose Tour. Let's get it right here, Aaron. And guys, did this match sneak up on you as well? It seems like this title fight had the least amount of hype leading up to it, and that's probably because the tournament has been so good and so distracting that we've all overlooked the fact that Harloff and Murrell are squaring off this Friday. It just feels like it snuck up without any notice. So am I the only one in feeling this way?
No, I did kind of forget about it. I did, and then I saw it on the schedule. I was like, oh, wow, that's like next week. Wow.
Yeah, I've been so engrossed with the tournament that when it was popped up on the schedule, finally officially with the official date, I'm just like you, Aaron. I was like, oh, that's right. This is happening, and that we're almost done with the team tournament. So it's like, yeah, that makes sense. You have to have this singles title before you start the singles tournament. Yeah, it was a welcome surprise as well.
But typically in the wrap-ups of each match, he will tease the future events for a while. He'll tease Collision, he'll tease Spectacular, but he did not talk at all about his match with Murrell. So that's probably why it snuck up as well. But yeah, we've been so distracted by 12 Schmoedowns per week that it's easy to overlook these things. So fans out there, comment below and let us know if this title match snuck up on you as well. Because our experience is not quite the same as the fans' experience. I mean, we're fans, of course, but because we're so engrossed in producing the show, it's easy for us to have a different viewing experience as compared to the average viewer. So please comment below and let us know. But let's dive into this because I've got a bunch of hypothetical scenarios that I want to run by you guys. I want to ask you which one you think is going to play out. I want to ask you who you got, basically. So since the greatest singles match of all time, Harloff v. Roca in September 2016, Harloff has not lost. He TKO'd Makuga in December 2016. He TKO'd Signor in April 2017. He beat Bibiani in May 2017. And he beat Jeff Sneider in July 2017 at Collision to now play Murrell in September 2017. The thing is, had he lost at any point along the way, his singles run likely would have been over, as he's been threatening to retire for over a year now. Unlike Makuga and Signor, he expected to lose to Bibiani in what was supposed to be his last match. However, after Collision's contender match against Sneider, that's when I realized how much Harloff wants to win a title. Sure, he hates all the drama, all the scrutiny that his matches bring, but he still wants that belt and this storyline, all of Vince and WWE. Now, I want to bring up some hypotheticals as I mentioned. If Murrell wins, I expect Harloff to retire immediately, something he's been threatening to do after his next loss again for over a year, especially when it came to the Beast, as I mentioned. I'm not sure he would have given Magic Hat or Signor that satisfaction, but with Bibiani, he was definitely willing to hang it up had he lost. But make no mistake, Murrell will be Kristian's last match if Kristian loses to him. Should Kristian win, I doubt he'll play the Ultimate Schmoedown singles tournament winner at Spectacular. I've said for a while that he would just retire as champion, something I hope he'll still do, even though that means the tourney winner wouldn't have an opponent. The obvious solution in that case is, well, what about Murrell playing the tournament winner for the belt at Spectacular, since Dan wouldn't be allowed to compete in the singles tourney anyway, much like MODOK and teams, nor would he since he knows he's a main eventer who should be playing for the belt at Spectacular regardless of the Harloff match outcome or the tourney outcome. However, will Dan want to do this after losing a potential second time? He's got nothing left to prove at this point because we all know that he could come back and win a belt with ease. So I'm not sure Dan would settle for a belt that Kristian retired with. Thus, I'm truly concerned that if Harloff beats Dan and Dan passes on a match at Spectacular, that it'll force Kristian to reluctantly defend the belt at Spectacular against the tourney winner, when Harloff doesn't want to defend the belt, he just wants to win it. At the end of the day, I want a champion who lives and breathes Schmoedown and doesn't mind driving the extra mile for it. The Schmoedown seems like an inconvenience for Dan, given the commute, something only locals understand. Plus, it's not his only priority in life, so even though he's the greatest of all time, I don't want a champion who goes to the league aside from main events. I also don't want a commissioner/champion who reluctantly defends the belt, a belt that he only wanted to win, not defend. So let me recap these hypotheticals for you guys so you can make your actual pick, as well as what scenario you think is going to play out. The likeliest scenario, Dan wins, he plays the tournament winner at Spectacular. If Kristian wins, he plays the tournament winner at Spectacular. Dan does not compete for the belt at Spectacular since he's not allowed in the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament. Number 3, if Kristian wins, he plays the tournament winner and Dan in a triple threat at Spectacular, which runs the risk of being too similar to Collision, while the tourney winner gets kind of a raw deal like Levine at Free For All. But number 4, if Kristian wins and retires with the belt, Dan would then take on the tournament winner at Spectacular, assuming Dan would want to. And number 5, if Kristian wins, retires with the belt, and Dan doesn't want to play at Spectacular, the tournament final, the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament final, would then become the Spectacular title main event match. as the belt would truly be up for grabs at that point. So, Frank, let me start with you. Who are you picking, and which scenario do you see playing out, if any?
This has been a tough one to pick for a while. I've gone back and forth, and a lot of people out there see it pretty cut and dry because Dan is, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, and they're just going to go with him. But I've seriously been back and forth. At the end of it, I'm going to have to go with Kristian. I picked him against Bibiani, but I didn't pick him against Snyder because I thought the match was going to run out for him, that it was just going to dry up. But then he beat Snyder, and I said, he's winning because he doesn't want to win, which I find really entertaining in itself, and somewhat, he's almost like driven by destiny to get to this point, and here we are at the title match. I just have a feeling that he could squeak it out. I mean, he is the one of the few guys in this league that he could eke out a win against Dan. I think it'd be very close. I think it might be a case of Dan more or less losing it than Kristian winning it. Nonetheless, Kristian can always put himself in a position to come out the victor, which I think could very well happen. And I kind of also would like to think that this will be the highest scoring match of both players' combined scores. This could definitely reach 65 points with both players. I could totally see that happening, or at least 60 points rather. 65 is a little high, but going to the scenario now, I've always thought that if Kristian won, yes, he would immediately retire with the belt, and that the tournament would then decide the new champion. I wasn't sure if that would take place at Spectacular, but I suppose that would be another a good way to do it. So that's kind of the scenario I foresee if Kristian from Murrell.
So you think Kristian will retire immediately? That means the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament winners would play for the belt, potentially at Spectacular. Do you think Dan is going to want to play for that belt at Spectacular, be it in a triple threat, be it the winner of the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament, or do you think Dan sits out for a bit? Maybe Dan just wants a break. Maybe Dan just wants to hang out for a bit and then poach the belt after all the tournament and Spectacular stuff shakes out. Maybe he just sits on the sidelines and then goes after the winner at Spectacular to start the next season.
I think Dan probably won't play in the tournament. And
he's not allowed to. If MODOK wasn't allowed to.
Right. Okay, right.
So should he lose? Should he lose?
Yeah, I wasn't aware if that was an actual stipulation put out there, but nonetheless, it makes sense if you're going to do that for teams. You might as well have the same stipulation for the singles. So will Dan want to play the winner?
Either the winner of the tournament or the two tournament finalists in a triple threat in the event that Kristian retires. I
would not want to see another triple threat so soon, especially, maybe once a year would be fine, or every other year. 2 in a year. As great as that was, the triple threat, I like to keep those a little more special. So I would stay away from a triple threat. I think he just might wait till the dust settles, who's the champ, see where he lies in the rankings after the tournament has concluded. And then if he wants to engage again to go after the belt, there's no way he's going to drop out of the top 3 or top 4 at the end of the tournament. So he could always get a pretty easy road back. Not easy road, but he has a shorter road to get a title match than most players would, just because of his stature in the league and his history. I think, if anything, he'll just sit back and wait and see, because he's the greatest and he can decide what he wants to do whenever he wants to do. Everyone at the Schmoedown will happily do whatever they can to make that work.
It'd be weird for him to play for a belt that Harloff basically gave up. It's kind of, I don't know. He doesn't have to reduce himself to that level. But Turner, who are you picking, and which scenario do you see playing out in the event that Dan wins or in the event that Kristian wins? Do you have another scenario potentially? Who you got?
Well, I think the one I look at the most that I don't want is a triple threat. Let's say that Kristian were to lose, or excuse me, if Kristian were to win and then retire, and there would be some sort of triple threat at Spectacular. I don't want that, because number one, the reason that Dan was in the triple threat in the first place is because Dan deserved, in my opinion, an immediate title rematch. He's the only player, I think, in Schmoedown history, outside of Team Patriots if they were to lose, that deserves an immediate title rematch that would never have to go through a number one contenders match, because he had defended that belt a handful of times. This time around, though, if Dan were to lose, he would be 2-2 in his last 4. That, to me, would not warrant an immediate title rematch. Now, I know that Dan is a great player. He's an all-timer. But at 2-2 in your last 4, that to me would not necessitate a match at Spectacular.
The triple threat would only take place if Kristian wins, because if Kristian wins, he doesn't want to hold this belt for too long. So a triple threat would increase the odds that he loses it. Dan would not have to be in a triple threat if he wins. Dan does not have to play in a triple threat if he wins. So if Dan loses, though, Dan can say, I'm a main eventer. I shouldn't have to play in the tournament. I can't play in the tournament. I want a triple threat. It's basically pulling the same card that Roca pulled prior to Collision. So if he wants a triple threat, I can't see Kristian saying no to that. But again, it's only in the event if Kristian wins. If Dan wins, he's not playing a triple threat.
Well, either way, I don't want to see him in a triple threat. I don't want that at all. But moving on, the scenario that I actually like the most, but don't think is going to happen, is that Kristian wins the belt, retires, and then the winners, the two finalists of the Ultimate Schmoedown Singles Tournament face each other at Spectacular for a vacant championship. That to me sounds so intriguing. You have 16 players, some of which only really one actually that have had the championship before, and that's Roca. You could have the possibility of 15 different champions that you may or may not have seen coming. Could be McWeeny, could be Levine, could be Clark, could be Stacey Howard, who knows? That to me is amazingly intriguing. I think that sounds like the most fun. Do I think it will happen? No, I don't. The fact of the matter is this. I think that Dan will win. I think Dan will continue his run. My only problem with Dan winning is, okay, so Dan beats Kristian. He goes on to face the winner of the Schmoedown tournament. Let's jump far ahead there and say that he wins at Spectacular and beats them as well. Who's next? So now we go back down the ladder to try to find somebody else to play Murrell that isn't Riley, that isn't Roca, that isn't Harloff, that probably isn't going to be Ellis. I don't know, man. Like, you got to try to find somebody he hasn't played before. He's played Clark. I don't know. And I don't want that either. So,
McQueen.
Well, that would be intriguing. But if Dan does this, then you have to go back down the ladder to pick somebody else. Whereas if these two people whoever won out of these two finalists, it would be a fresh rivalry. You could have fresh contenders. That to me is a fun scenario, but I'm still sticking with the fact that I think Dan will win and Dan will dominate once again.
Yeah, I'm sure Dan doesn't like beating the same players every time either, and that's why I've been stressing unclogging this league as far as singles goes for such a long time, because McQueenie, Bibbiani, there's a lot of fresh blood in this league that would be interesting matchups for guys like Murrell.
Yeah, I think this is probably going to be the last year where we see a bunch of the quote-unquote regulars heavily compete this year. I think next year is a year when you're going to see a lot more Bibbiani, Drew McWeeny, maybe more Snyder in singles, as opposed to if Riley's going to be
already
a step back. Right. Riley's going to be taking a step back. I don't think Roca's going to get as much play next year in the singles, pending him not winning the tournament.
Makuga.
I think, please, yes.
Well, I'm just saying, Makuga's another guy that's on the back burner right now.
Right, and he should be, because he's a 500 player, luckily. So I think you're going to see a lot, maybe more Rachel next year in singles. So I think this is going to be the year, to kind of wrap up the old guard, if you will, and start bringing in new people like Ben Bateman, perhaps. And again, Drew McWeeny, Bibbiani, more active in the singles. That's going to be next year. I think this year we'll hopefully wrap up somewhat of these veterans of the league, if you will. But I think that's how it's going to end up, because, yeah, you have Kristian and Dan, two people who've been in this league from the very beginning, just about. It's going to, I think, one way or the other, only one of them can stand at the top and be that one guy that's been there from the beginning. My pick, again, is Kristian to win it, so I think it's going to go that way. And then next year, you won't see a whole lot of Dan, because they'll bring in fresh blood into the league.
Well, he's a main eventer. He only plays main events.
Oh, right.
Now, so.
Yeah. And again, everyone's still always going to chase Murrell. Everyone's always going to try and be on Murrell's heel and try and entice him or try and get to play him, because he's the best, and who doesn't want to face the best? So there's I think a lot of good stuff can happen. Whichever player wins, whatever outcome we have, I think there's still going to be a lot of good things happen.
I don't know how else I can say it. I'm terrified of the thought that Kristian will have to defend the belt at Spectacular, since he doesn't want to defend the belt as much as he wants to win the belt. Whomever he'd play at Spectacular, I'd bet heavy on them. And while I hope Dan wins to avoid such a conflict, I'm also growing tired of a champion who goes to the league unless there's a main event. I've said this already, but still. Dan is the greatest player of all time, win or lose, but I've got a bad feeling about this match for some reason. I don't know if Dan wants the burden of this belt any longer. I don't know if he has the competitive fire that he once had. Since he won at Collision, he's been MIA, understandably, but the ghosting would only continue if he wins now and or at Spectacular. However, if Harloff wins, we've got a commish/singles champion who doesn't want to defend the belt. He may say he wants to defend it if he wins, but the priority was only winning it. It was not keeping it. So hypotheticals aside, I'm going with Kristian Harloff simply because he wants this belt more than Dan wants to keep this belt right now. Having nothing to lose got him this far, but now it's a matter of desire. Dan, like I said, has nothing to prove at this point, whether he wins or loses. The desire simply isn't there like it used to be. Kristian, his desire is there. We all know the greatest Schmoedowner that will ever play this game is Dan, but once again, Kristian reading Schmoedown questions twice a week for 18 months, many of which are related to the question writer's taste, as well as past questions, be it a variation or inverse. That provides a much bigger advantage than people realize. It led Ellis to victory in last year's Ultimate Schmoedown singles tournament, and now it's led Kristian to his greatest Schmoedown stretch ever. I want Dan to win, so there's a simple and clean title match at Spectacular. However, if Dan loses, as I expect, I'm worried that he'll sit out a bit and just wait to pounce on the champ, whomever that is, post-Spectacular. So either way, I think this title match is going to flip the Schmoedown on its head. I just don't want a champion who reluctantly defends the belt because Murrell doesn't want to play at Spectacular, be it a triple threat.
I just also want to add real quick what Aaron said. He would not want to see Dan Murrell get an immediate rematch. And I agree with that if he lost. Because you're right, he's 2-2. And let's also remember that Sam Levine wasn't...
Dan Murrell gets all the exceptions in the world.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, Sam Levine wasn't even an actual number one contender. He was ranked number 10 at the time or number 9 at the time. And yeah, he won that free-for-all, and so he got to cash it in.
Do you really think Kristian is going to leave out the top player in the league at the biggest event of the year?
He should, yeah.
If he's trying to push this old or this new guard with
right.
action and all these other new teams, 6 Degrees, DC Movie News, why keep Dan in there at 2-2? Why do it? He's Dan Murrell. Okay, so?
Because Kristian does not want to hold this belt. He wants to win the belt, but he doesn't want to have to defend it. So if Kristian puts himself in a triple threat match against the tournament winner plus Dan Murrell,
I'm bored.
That guarantees that Kristian loses the belt at Spectacular, which is what Kristian wants. So either way, he comes out getting what he wants, which is unloading the belt. He just wanted to win it once. But if he has to defend it reluctantly at Spectacular, that's a problem. But if Dan doesn't want to play at Spectacular, or if Dan wants to sit out, then Kristian has to play at Spectacular, and that is not ideal. I'm really worried about both of them in either case, whether one wins or the other wins.
If Dan gets an immediate title shot at Spectacular, I'm bored. That's all I'm going to say. I'm bored.
I'm on board. I'm on board with what you're saying there, Aaron. And it's not that I'd be bored. It's just that more or less, I'm not saying like super bored. It's just like we've seen this, and I thought we were trying to get away with that. That was the point of the triple threat. If Kristian wins it, retires, and now Murrell's going to play at Spectacular or whatever the situation is that happens. What was the triple threat for? Because we're trying to get in these new guys, as you said, with Drew McWeeny, Bibiani. It's a lot of them. So and again, the 2-2 record, Levine wasn't a true number one contender. I don't think it warrants an automatic rematch, even if it's Dan.
I don't see a scenario where you can leave a main eventer out of a main event, especially if Kristian wins a belt that he doesn't want to defend.
That could very well happen. I just don't agree with that.
He's got to make sure he's no longer champion after Spectacular. So I'm concerned in either direction. I'm very concerned regardless of who wins.
Again, I do really like the idea, as Aaron brought up, that the tournament is pretty much it's a race to the title now. It's a race to the title. You got 16 people going after it. That does sound like a lot of fun. I think it would be a lot of fun to use that throughout the tournament, saying who's going to be the new champ. And yeah, it may not be what you want, Brian, but
that was a hypothetical that I brought up. I brought up that hypothetical that the tournament would decide the belt ultimately. That was one of my hypotheticals.
Right.
Harloff beats Murrell and retires. And Dan says, you know what? I don't want to play the tournament winner at Spectacular. Thus, the tournament winners then become the final at Spectacular. That was definitely a scenario. That makes the tournament way more exciting as a result. So that could be the silver lining. That allows for fresh blood, new guard, whatever you want to call it. But I still feel like Kristian is going to be forced to compete at Spectacular when he doesn't want that ultimately.
That to me is the most winnable scenario. I think that's one that if Kristian does retire and everybody gets upset, which I'm sure a lot of people will, some maybe not, but that is the best scenario for excitement, I think.
Well, here's the thing. I don't see Dan turning around and saying, well, Kristian just retired this belt or retired with the belt. I don't see him saying, oh, I want this belt now. To me, that belt would seem less desirable because it's kind of Kristian's throwaways in a way. Like it's still valuable, but doesn't mean as much if Kristian retires and gives it up. Murrell could have given up the belt at any time, but he didn't.
Yeah, I don't see that happening either, but I mean, that's fine.
No, that's the thing though. If Kristian wins and Dan doesn't want to compete at Spectacular because he doesn't want to or because he's not allowed to, I mean, that's basically the scenario to get two players from the tournament to compete for the belt.
Yeah.
I still think if Kristian wins and retires, that Murrell will be asked to play at a Spectacular main event against the tournament winner. Murrell will essentially become Harloff if Harloff retires with the belt. But hopefully, Dan says, no thanks, I'm good. Let's let the tournament finalists duke it out. That would be the best case scenario.
Agreed.
Could you imagine a scenario where that happens and the two finalists play for the belt and it's Mark Ellis that wins? So you go from Kristian to Ellis?
Jesus.
Could you imagine? Would that be a disaster?
They would have to play. I don't care. That's it.
There you go.
They have to play that.
There's a scenario we didn't think of. What if Kristian holds the belt and Ellis wins the tournament?
Man.
There it is.
This is heaven.
There's your Kobayashi Maru's unwinnable scenario.
Yeah, but
guys, how did we not think of this?
You know what? I'll tell you something off the air, what I think about that.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I think ultimately what we've come down to is, Brian, you are picking Kristian. Frank, you are also picking Kristian. I go with the status quo that is Dan Murrell.
I can't blame you.
And do we all think Kristian retires regardless of the outcome?
Yeah, I do.
Retires on the spot.
If he wasn't the commissioner, I would say it's no question he would continue. But
he is the commissioner. That's the problem.
That's correct. It is a little bit different. So, yeah, I guess I will lean a little bit towards. I'll lean towards retirement. I'll go ahead and say yes. I think he will.
So yeah, it's a lot of it rides on what Murrell wants to do. I still have a hard time believing that the promoter of this league will not want to include Murrell somehow, unless Murrell says, you know what, I'm good for a few months. I'm going to kick the crap out of whomever emerges from Spectacular. Either way, I think we'll come out on top, as we all want the Ultimate Schmoedown finalists to duke it out at Spectacular. I just want someone who wants the belt. I want someone who wants to represent the Schmoedown all the time and wants to be there. And as much as I'm not a fan of this person, I do admire the fact that JSR went out of his way to be at almost every match. He lived and breathed the Schmoedown. He was the ambassador for the league. He flew to Miami to talk to the Rock and have him hold the belt and cut a promo. So I want another version of that for this league. I want the next champion to be an active champion, not a champion who ghosts the league.
I think that next version, if it's not going to be John Roca, I think that next version is probably Bibiani, because he's there all the time as well.
Exactly.
I don't know about Drew. Drew's good enough to do it, but being there like Roca was, probably not. But definitely Bibiani. He's that next guy that's probably the next best thing as a champ for this league that you could, or even Snyder.
Remember what I said during our bracketology episode? I said if Drew McQueenie has the chance to establish a rhythm, look out. The same thing goes for Bibiani in singles. If he has the chance to establish a rhythm and not play these sporadic matches like Drew had to play for a while too, if he gets a chance to establish a rhythm, look out.
Right. I think the thing is that we're finding out is you got to earn that kind of rhythm You gotta wade through those tough waters to help build yourself a rhythm and get yourself going, like Drew has done.
But he played one match with Levine. Again, the first match is the hardest part, getting that initial win.
Yeah.
Then they played probably a week later, then a week later. Having these matches in close proximity is a big deal because typically they have to wait months in between. So like with McQueenie, the tournament system could very well benefit Bibbiani in a way that having to wait 2 to 3 months in between matches has not helped his rhythm.
He's just better hope he doesn't get upset.
Any kind of tournament, March Madness, the NFL playoffs, I don't care. I just love tournaments.
I like when my 12 seed goes to the final.
I like when I'm almost right.
All right, guys, that is our preview. Tell us what you think. What are some scenarios you found out here? Which one do you think works? Do you have a scenario of your own? Who do you got? Who do you think is going to win the big match? And to help you with that decision, Frank Janisch, our faithful stat man, has some stats for you. Frank, hit me.
That's right, Aaron. This is a monumental match between two players who have been on historic runs throughout various points of their Schmoedown career. Kristian Harloff, he is on a 4-game winning streak. Now, there's only been 2 people in the history of the game to have 5-game winning streaks. Riley did it early on. Murrell did it through the peak of his career here. And Kristian could become the 3rd person to have a 5-game winning streak in the singles division. It would be quite a feat to do, especially against Dan Murrell if that were to happen. Now, if we look at Dan Murrell's numbers, they are impressive. I don't think you just have the eye test. You just know he's deadly in every round that he plays in. In the 8-question format that we have, he's been answering 80%. That's the 2 matches he had at Collision, the triple threat and against Levine, and then the match against Roca. That was actually his weakest first round performance when he went 5 of 8. Other than that, he's been 7 of 8 and 8 of 9 when he got the bonus against Levine. So that's an 80% clip in the first round in this new era of the first round. Looking at round 2, he's answering 93, nearly 94% correct. In the final round, the 3rd round, or the final round in a 5-round match, he's answered 13 out of 15 questions correct, earning all available points to him, so he is no slouch in that final round. When you look at Harloff, his first rounds have been somewhat suspect, and that's where he could get in trouble. But if he gets on a roll in that first round, which is what I'm predicating my prediction on, he could do some serious damage here. But when we look at his Collada era numbers with this 8-round question, he's answering 67%, so it's not that great. But he's super strong in that second round. Since it's moved over to Collider, he's only given up 1 opportunity to steal, which means he's only gotten 1 question wrong. He's been 4 out of 4 for nearly all of his matches except for 1. So he's answering 85% correct post 2014. And then you look at his 3rd round, he's answering 86, nearly 87% correct. And again, he's been on this 4-game win streak, defeating Makuga, Andy Signor, Bibbiani, and Snyder, and now he's trying to take on Dan Murrell and get that 5th game under his belt for the streak, for that record, to share that record. And it's going to be so close. I just beside myself right now. Now, if you look at Harloff, his main accurate categories: fantasy sci-fi, he's answering 76%, action adventure 76%, drama 75%. Those are his top 3 categories that he does really, really well in. But that does not compare to what Murrell has done. In action adventure, he's answering 95%, horror thriller 92%, drama 86%. Those are his 3 top accurate categories. He gets those, it could be a really rough ride for Harloff. But I think, as we've seen in this run with Harloff, luck has been pretty much on his side, and I think that's going to continue. And again, this not wanting to win, but he's gonna anyways, I think that supersedes all these numbers, because numbers-wise, it all points Dan. It all points towards Dan. I just think the luck factor is something you cannot gauge, and that's what's going to send Harloff over the top, in my estimation.
I think it's important to point out that his streak, compared to other streaks, has taken place in the peak era of the Schmoedown, the last 9 months. So this is very different from other people's streaks. This has been in the most competitive era of the Schmoedown, where he's been the most active within the Schmoedown. And as I keep saying, do not underestimate the advantage of calling 2 matches per week for the last 18 months gives you. This is significant because he's got a handle on what Skaliski likes to ask, the types of movies that Skaliski's interested in. He knows Skaliski's mind at this point, and we saw it with Ellis, and now we're seeing it with Harloff. Both guys call these matches I think that is a bigger advantage than most people want to admit.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on, guys. We're going to get out of here. We're going to have our full episode on Saturday with a special guest. Frank Janisch, where can you be found? You won't be joining us Friday, but you will be here in spirit. Where can you be found, sir?
I'm on Twitter at FrankieJ29. And also, remember, guys, the new Twitter for the Rundown, SD Rundown Stats. That's at SD Rundown Stats. And that's where you can find all the latest Schmoedown stats.
Good stuff. Brian Davids, where can you be found?
Make sure to follow the show's Twitter handle at SD Rundown for all the latest news, episode links, reactions to news, all the fawning over Brian Ward artwork. It's all there at SD Rundown. You guys can find more of me, Brian Davids, on Twitter at BDF331, as well as filmschlubspodcast.com.
And my name is Aaron. You can find me on Twitter at ATTitanium. And yeah, we'll see you Saturday. Take care.